Hey guys, tonight we take a detour from the roaring halls of Valhalla, the blood-slicked decks of longships, and the over-glamorized horned helmets that, let's be honest, no one actually wore. Instead, you wake in a place far humbler, a cramped longhouse. Damp, smoky, and slightly too close to a very flatulent goat. Your eyes crack open to a haze of morning mist and a tickle of wood smoke clinging to your nostrils. The hearth has long since dulled to embers, and your blanket, really just an itchy wool cloak, did nothing to stop the draft that crept up your legs all night. Welcome to life in a quiet Norse village, nestled by the fjords, where you were born and, most likely, where you'll die. Peacefully, boringly, and sorry, without ever swinging an axe into a Saxon's face. You probably won't survive this story either, not because it's dangerous, but because it's slow, cozy, and possibly very, very dull. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is in your part of the world. I love seeing how far these little bedtime tales travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll off the straw mattress, careful not to disturb your cousin snoring beside you. Privacy is not a Viking concept. You stretch and step outside barefoot, straight into a puddle. Of course, rain drizzles, not enough to be dramatic, just persistent enough to soak through your tunic. A typical morning in late spring. The village yawns into motion. Chickens are already raising their grievances with the sun, and your neighbor Oddbjorn is yelling at his cartwheel again. That thing has been almost fixed for 3 years. You nod to him. He grunts something in return, either good morning or curse this wheel, hard to say. You wander to the communal well with your wooden bucket, and the old woman who runs the water rota eyes you like you're about to skip your turn, which, let's be honest, you've done before. 1 time, maybe 3. You wait. A distant clang of metal echoes from the smithy, where someone is already hammering out something shiny and probably unnecessary. There are only so many fish hooks a village can use, but Hjalti insists he's inventing precision tools. Historians still argue whether Norse blacksmiths were truly the master artisans they're now credited as, or if Hjalti's entire forge is mostly a cover for his midlife crisis. Back home, your mother is stirring something gray and lumpy in a cauldron. Barley porridge. Again. You sit, eat, and chew slowly. No one speaks until the second bite. You're not going raiding. Your mother says flatly. You blink. No one invited me, you mutter. She nods with suspicious satisfaction. That's the thing about Viking raids. They're only glorious in songs. In reality, half the men don't come back, and the other half come back full of worms, debt, and questionable stories about monasteries. You'd rather milk goats. Your younger sister enters, eyes puffy with sleep and carrying a chicken under one arm like a purse. She places it on the table. It pecks once at your bowl, then leaves. No one reacts. After breakfast, you sweep the longhouse. Not because it's expected, but because stepping on a goat pellet barefoot again might break your soul. Then you grab your walking stick, sling a leather satchel over your shoulder, and head for the hills to check on the sheep. It's not glamorous, but they respect you. Or at least, they don't bite. Usually, you walk past the training field where the warrior types, your brother included, are tossing spears and grunting. One of them trips over his own foot and lands in a puddle. You try not to smile. He's the same guy who once bragged about slaying 3 Danes in a tavern brawl, with a spoon. On the hill, the wind is sharp. You count the sheep, note the one with a limp, and try not to get distracted by the view. Mountains dusted in snow, the ocean like wrinkled tin, and clouds so close they look like gods could lean down and flick you. Sometimes you wonder what else is out there. But then you remember you get seasick in bathtubs. A raven lands nearby, tilting its head. In Norse belief, ravens are messengers from Odin, or spies, or just really nosy birds. You give it a nod, just in case. By midday, you're napping beneath a spruce tree. Not a warrior's life, maybe, but peaceful. You dream of bread that isn't hard enough to chip teeth, and of shoes that actually fit. You wake to the sound of distant shouting and hoofbeats. Maybe a raid, maybe someone just dropped their stew. You shrug, grab your stick, and trudge back to the village. Turns out, it's just a horse with a loose saddle and an overly dramatic rider. He claims he saw a sea serpent near the coast. Everyone gathers to laugh, but one old man mutters, "Historians still argue whether the Midgard serpent was real." He might be joking. You're not sure. Back inside the longhouse, your father is sharpening a spoon. Just a spoon. Slowly. It's either therapy or a very passive-aggressive message. Your mother hums an old tune, something about a harvest goddess and fermented turnips. You eat dinner by firelight. Salt fish, more barley, and a turnip so soft it collapses when you poke it. A luxurious evening. Someone plays a lyre. Badly. You curl into your blanket, head against the wall, and listen to the rain return. A drop leaks through the thatch and lands on your forehead. You whisper to no one. Another exciting day in the life of a non-raiding Viking. And sleep comes easy. You wake up to chewing sounds. Rhythmic, wet, unapologetically goat-like. One of them has stuck its head inside the longhouse again and is halfway through a basket of kindling. You swat at it lazily, missing by a generous margin, and it saunters out with the smugness only goats possess. Outside, the sky is a cool gray soup. You shuffle toward the fire pit with your wooden bowl, which your mother fills without eye contact. The porridge looks suspiciously identical to yesterday's, and the day before, and possibly the week before that. You stir it slowly, as if delaying the inevitable might somehow season it. At the communal table, the usual suspects are already gathered. Old men with beards like tangled nets, gossiping women who somehow know things before they happen, and your cousin Finner, who once tried to build a boat entirely out of clay and still insists it almost worked. You sit, and the conversation rolls over you like morning fog. Someone is angry that someone else borrowed an axe and returned it with a chip. Someone else thinks it's time to extend the chicken coop. And someone, probably drunk, is proposing that the village invest in a second goat. An outrageous luxury. You chew in silence while a fly dances near your face. No one has said your name, which is nice. You plan to keep it that way. But then Thora, the loudest of the elder women, slams a cup down and fixes you with one squinting eye. "When are you going to do something useful?" she asks. You blink. "I tend the sheep," you reply, mouth still full of porridge. "Bah," she scoffs. "They tend themselves. Why not go raiding? Or build something? You're not even married." You nod politely. This is not your first Thora interrogation. You suspect she has a list. You are probably at the top. "You'd be useful as a shield bearer," she adds, "if only you'd grow a spine." Historians still argue whether shield bearers in Norse society were respected apprentices or glorified baggage handlers. Either way, you're not interested in carrying other people's stuff while they run into swords. You finish eating and slip outside under the guise of fetching more water. It's a good excuse, and no one questions it. You bring the bucket and head to the well. As you walk, you pass the carpenter's shed. Inside, the carpenter, Bercy, is staring thoughtfully at a log. You ask what he's making. "A ladder," he says. "For what?" He shrugs. "To reach high things." You nod, impressed by the ambition. He once made a chair that collapsed under the weight of a cat, so this could be a turning point. Further down, near the edge of the village, you see children running around a stump, screaming about trolls. One of them has a stick and is casting spells with such dedication that a nearby dog starts barking in alarm. You smile. Childhood is always more magical when you're not cold and tired yet. You drop the bucket into the well and hear it splash far below. As you wait, you glance up at the sky. Clouds roll like lazy bison across the heavens. You wonder if Thor is up there, hammer in hand, contemplating whether today deserves thunder. You hope not. The bucket comes back heavy, and you lug it home, arms aching. At least no one's asking you to lead an expedition or fight a bear. You've heard rumors that across the sea, some Vikings have begun using horses in battle. Others scoff. Too fancy, they say. But historians still argue whether mounted warfare was ever a part of everyday Norse strategy or just saga embellishment. You set the water down and feel a tug at your sleeve. It's a small boy, your neighbor's kid. He looks up at you with wide eyes and whispers, "There's a fox in the woodpile." You sigh. Again, you follow him to the pile behind the longhouse, where indeed a young fox is trying to extract a chicken bone from beneath a log. You stomp once, and it darts away, bushy tail trailing like a banner of mischief. The boy cheers. You ruffle his hair and tell him he's very brave, which earns you an awkward hug and a smear of something sticky on your tunic. Back inside, your mother is stirring something new. Not porridge. You peek over her shoulder. Stew, with what looks like meat in it. A good day indeed. You help peel turnips and slice onions. Well, you attempt to slice onions. The knife is older than you and duller than a stone in a blanket. Still, it's communal, and no one's about to replace it. Your father says it was a wedding gift. From a blind man. Probably a joke, but no one laughs anymore. Dinner is surprisingly lively. Someone found a cask of old mead and insists it's aged perfectly. The first sip nearly unhinges your jaw. A woman begins singing. Not well. Your cousin Finner joins in, turning the tune into something resembling a wounded goose. People clap anyway. You excuse yourself early and walk to the edge of the village, where a small lookout post perches on a hill. It's your favorite place. From here, you can see the river winding like silver ribbon through the trees, and the distant mountains holding up the sky. A man sits there already, Gunnar the Quiet. You nod. He nods back. No words, just two average villagers watching the world do its thing. After a while, he speaks. You ever think about leaving? You pause. Sometimes. But then who would watch the sheep? He chuckles, low and dry. They'd probably manage. You both sit in silence as the sky turns from steel to indigo. The first stars blink through. One of them, Gunnar says, is supposed to be the eye of Odin, watching, judging, or just twinkling. Who knows? You stand and head home, careful not to trip on the uneven stones. The longhouse is warm now. Someone fixed the leak, and your bed has been fluffed with moss. Luxury. You lie down, close your eyes, and smile faintly. Tomorrow will be exactly the same, and for now, that's perfect. Your day begins with a thump to the forehead. Not metaphorical. A sheep's nose. You forgot to latch the gate last night, and one of the more enterprising ewes has decided your longhouse makes a great breakfast nook. She's halfway through the emergency winter straw when you finally coax her out using a dried apple and your most persuasive threats. Outside, the air smells like wet bark and damp wool, and the ground squelches beneath your boots. It's herding day. You trudge up the hill with your staff and a pouch of stale bread. The sheep, contrary to their reputation as docile fluffballs, seem to enjoy testing your patience. One limps melodramatically, another bolts just because it can, and a third, your favorite, named Grizzle, chews on your cloak the entire walk. You consider composing a saga just for her, the Ballad of Grizzle, the Cloak Destroyer. As the village disappears behind the ridge, the sounds of shouting, hammering, and chickens fade into a hush of wind through pine. It's a rare kind of peace, even if it's wrapped in manure-scented reality. By mid-morning, you reach the summer grazing fields. The grass is longer here, wilder. You unroll a small net fence meant to discourage wandering. The sheep ignore it entirely, of course. You settle on a flat rock, biting into your bread and watching the flock bumble across the slope. One of them attempts to climb a tree. It goes about as well as you'd expect. Behind you, the forest murmurs, not loudly, just enough to keep your nerves awake. The elders say spirits live there. Forest wights, deer women, maybe even trolls. You've never seen one, but that doesn't mean they aren't watching. Or laughing. Historians still argue whether Norse folklore served more as moral compass or just an elaborate excuse to explain missing livestock. Either way, you keep your eyes open. A shadow moves. You leap up, staff ready. It's your cousin Finner. He waves, holding something in his arms. A lamb, he calls. Got stuck in the briars again, probably chasing ghosts. You breathe, barely. Next time, you mutter, make more noise. He shrugs, amused. And miss the chance to scare you half to Helheim? You take the lamb from him. It's small, twitchy, and covered in leaves. You tuck it under your cloak to calm it. It immediately pees on you. Of course. Finner flops onto the grass, stretching like a man with no chores. You ever think we're wasting our lives? He asks. You glance at him. Regularly. I mean, look at them. He gestures toward the mountains. The raiders, the traders, people out there doing things. And here we are, sheep sitting. You say nothing for a moment. Then, one of them got stabbed in the butt last year. Finner snorts. That was hilarious. And another drowned trying to impress a woman in Dublin. Less hilarious. And Bjorn the Tall caught something on a foreign island that made his face swell like a pumpkin. Definitely not hilarious. Finner sighs. Still, sometimes I wonder. You don't blame him. Stories drift into the village like fog. Riches, danger, cities bigger than anything you've imagined, and foods you can't even pronounce. There's a world out there, but there's also comfort in knowing where your next turnip is coming from. You both fall silent. A hawk circles overhead. The lamb nuzzles deeper into your cloak. Warm. Damp. You'll need to clean it later, probably with something that smells worse than the original mess. By afternoon, the clouds roll in again, thick and low like the belly of some lazy god. You gather the sheep with a few practiced whistles. They actually listen, either out of respect or boredom. Back in the village, the scene is the usual slow chaos. Someone has broken a barrel of pickled fish and is chasing chickens with a broom. Your aunt is arguing with the healer about whether onions can cure lovesickness. Spoiler, they cannot. You return the lamb to the pen, now dry and disgruntled. Your father nods at you, his version of well done. He's carving something on a bone, probably a spoon, maybe just taking his feelings out on a mammoth's femur. You wash in the stream, muttering about bodily fluids and sheep loyalty. The water is icy and cleansing. A dragonfly hovers near your face like a tiny, iridescent oracle. Dinner is stew. Again, this time with turnips and a bone you're pretty sure has already been in 3 other stews. The flavor deepens with every reuse, or so your mother claims. You mostly chew around it. After the meal, the village children gather for stories. You're pulled in by your sister, who insists you make one up this time. You do. You tell a tale of a sheep who wanted to be a warrior. It left the flock, stowed away on a ship, saw the world, got very seasick, and came home with a bronze comb it didn't know how to use. The children giggle. One boy insists he saw that exact sheep last winter. You ruffle his hair and call him a liar. He beams like it's the best compliment ever. As the fire dies down, you sit near the hearth, rubbing your sore legs and watching sparks dance into the dark. A pot creaks as it settles into cooling ash. The smell of smoked meat clings to your tunic. Tomorrow, you'll herd again. Maybe argue with a tree stump. Maybe save another lamb. You don't know. But as your eyelids droop and the world softens, you feel something that the raiders never talk about in their songs. A quiet sort of joy. A life unfolding, one muddy step at a time. You wake to yelling. Again. This time, it's not your goat or a misbehaving sheep. It's gossip. You step outside into a swirl of morning mist and mild indignation. 2 of the village's elder women are mid-argument, hands flailing, shawls askew, voices high enough to startle birds out of the rafters. You catch a few words, witchcraft, missing comb, and something about a man in a tunic that was too nice. You keep walking. You know better than to step between 2 Norse women in a verbal skirmish. There's no shield sturdy enough. And anyway, your business lies elsewhere. Specifically, near the cooking fire where your sister is already fanning flames and humming to herself. She's preparing flatbread, badly. Morning, you mumble. She points at a lump of dough. Your turn. You glance at the sticky blob. I'd rather wrestle Grizzle again. But you do it anyway, because it's either that or get roped into hauling water. And honestly, at least flatbread doesn't bite. Usually. As the day stretches, so does the drama. You pass a group whispering near the blacksmith's forge. Apparently, someone was seen at midnight, walking barefoot in the fog, muttering to themselves. The implication they were summoning something. Possibly the spirit of someone else's husband. Or a goat. Details are fuzzy. One woman insists she saw blue light above the hill last night. Another swears she heard voices in the trees. A third just wants to know who stole her linen. These things may or may not be related. Historians still argue whether Norse rural communities truly believed in the physical presence of spirits or used folklore as a form of community discipline, an early system of social checks and balances disguised as ghost stories. Either way, you keep your head down. You stop by the healer's hut to drop off a bundle of moss and willow bark. Your grandmother taught you to gather it after storms. It helps with swelling, fevers, and according to her, emotional cowardice. No one's sure if that last one is literal or metaphorical. Inside the hut, the healer, Modir, is grinding something in a bowl. Smells like feet, you say. Then it's working, she replies. You hand her the herbs. She thanks you with a nod and offers a slice of dried pear. You accept it with gratitude. It's the best thing you'll taste all week. Walking back through the village square, you pass by the carpenter's son, who is very clearly not carving wood and very clearly flirting with the weaver's daughter. She pretends not to notice. He pretends not to be terrible at pretending. You shake your head. Later that day, you head to the river for laundry. Your favorite tunic, softer than most, smells only slightly of sheep, has acquired a mysterious stain, possibly stew, possibly fox-related. Hard to say. The river is cold and the rocks bruise your knees, but the sun finally shows its face and you find a rhythm in scrubbing, rinsing, wringing. Other villagers are there too, exchanging small talk and rumors as clothes slap wetly against stone. One woman leans close and whispers, "You know Astrid?" You nod. Everyone knows Astrid. She makes the best cheese and once hit a bear with a rake. She's been reading. Your eyes widen. Reading what? Runes, secret ones, in a book from a merchant. You pause. That is a scandal. Books are rare, expensive, and vaguely suspicious. Most people can't read more than a carved name. The very idea of silently consuming knowledge? Dangerous, tempting. You make a mental note to ask Astrid about it, quietly. On your way home, you pass the old standing stone near the woods. Someone's left flowers at its base. Wild, freshly picked. A love offering, perhaps, or a plea. The stone's surface is covered in lichen and faint carvings that may or may not be actual runes. Your grandmother used to say the stone hums on Midsummer's Eve. You pressed your ear to it once and only heard wind. Back in the village, the argument from this morning has evolved into a full committee. People are sitting on logs, drinking thin ale, and deciding who will investigate the supposed sorcery. Someone suggests putting the suspected person in a boat and seeing if it sinks. Classic logic. You slip away before they start asking for volunteers. At home, your sister is dyeing wool with lichen and onion skins. The colors aren't exactly vibrant, unless you consider damp ochre a color, but she hums happily and has only dyed her hands a little yellow. That evening, you watch the sunset with your father. He's whittling something again. Probably another spoon, maybe a pipe, possibly just whittling for the sake of whittling. "Storm's coming," he says, not looking up. You nod. He always knows. The fire crackles. Your mother snores softly in the corner. Your cousin is still awake, fiddling with something metallic, a trinket from a trader shaped like a tiny dragon. You ask him where it came from. "East," he says vaguely. "Beyond the Rus, maybe even Constantinople." The name alone feels like a spell. He shrugs, "But I like it better here." You lie down and pull your cloak close, still smelling faintly of pear and sheep. Tomorrow, the gossip will shift. But for now, you drift to sleep with visions of books, blue lights, and what it might feel like to touch something forbidden. You wake up to rain, not the soft storybook drizzle that adds charm to a day, but the aggressive sideways sort that slaps your cheeks and tries to crawl up your sleeves before you're even fully dressed. Your roof leaks again, same spot, right above your bed. Of course. You squelch outside in damp boots, just in time to see a crowd gathering near the docks, or what passes for docks in your village. A few slippery logs lashed together and a rotting pier that groans more than it floats. Something's happening. You edge through the onlookers. There, center stage and soaking wet, stands Eric, the village's most excitable man. He's shouting over the wind, waving a soaked scroll, and declaring with great drama that a ship is setting sail tomorrow, southward, possibly toward Francia, possibly to just see where the sea ends. The excitement is contagious. Even the goats seem intrigued. Eirik explains that the crew is light, they need strong backs, brave hearts, good throwing arms, the usual pitch. But you notice something else. His eyes dart, just a little too eagerly, toward the elders. He wants approval, and an audience. People begin volunteering, some immediately, some cautiously. Your brother steps forward without hesitation. Of course he does. He's always itching for adventure, even if it just means stealing sausages from rival villages. Then someone elbows you. It's Finner. "This is it," he whispers. "Our chance. Let's go." You stare at the ship, or rather, the battered canoe on steroids that's going to be called a ship if Eric keeps yelling loud enough. Rain drips from your nose. "I don't know," you mutter. Finner frowns. "What do you mean you don't know? Aren't you tired of sheep and porridge and arguing about ghosts?" You are. But there's your mother, standing behind the crowd, arms crossed, face unreadable. Her left foot is wrapped in cloth, bandaged tight. You blink. "Wait, that wasn't there yesterday." You approach. "What happened?" She shrugs. "Twisted it on the ladder." "We don't have a ladder." She doesn't flinch. "We do now." You get the message, loud and clear. You're not going. The village will never say it outright, but someone must stay. Watch the old, mend the roofs, clean up the goat accidents. Not everyone can sail away to steal shiny things. You apparently are not everyone. Back at home, your brother packs anyway. He throws in dried meat, 3 knives, and something that smells like fermented celery. He's humming, loudly. Excited? You ask. He grins. I'm going to see a bishop, or stab one. Depends how it goes. You can't argue with the logic. At dinner, no one talks about it. The ship, the volunteers, your decision. It's as though the whole event has been tucked under the table like a dirty bowl no one wants to wash. Afterward, you step outside alone. The storm has passed, but puddles glitter like dull silver mirrors, and clouds hang low like regrets. You walk toward the outskirts, down the goat path, and past the old shrine made of stones and wishes, the kind where people leave offerings when they're not sure what they believe in. You sit. A frog hops by and makes eye contact as if to say, some of us are meant to stay close to the mud. You nod. Fair point. Historians still argue whether Norse villagers like you, those who didn't raid, were simply left behind or were essential to the society's actual survival. No one sings songs about the ones who kept the fires lit, but they also didn't die of gangrene on a beach somewhere near Normandy. You spend the next morning helping your mother with her injury. She's not limping nearly as much when she thinks no one is watching. You say nothing. Your brother leaves with the others. The dock creaks. The villagers cheer. You wave, half-hearted. He shouts something unintelligible, throws you a sack of dried fish, and disappears into the fog. The rest of the day is heavy. The village feels thinner, like someone cut a slice from it and didn't sew the edges together again. Your cousin jokes that now there'll be fewer people fighting over turnips. It doesn't help. That night, you sit by the hearth with a clay cup of something warm, mead light, mostly water, and hope. Your father sharpens his spoon knife. Your sister sings to herself while weaving. You press your palm to the stone floor, just to feel something solid. Later, as you lie in bed staring at the dripping roof, you imagine the ship, tossing in dark water, the creak of wet wood. Your brother telling exaggerated stories to strangers. You wonder if he'll return. Most of them do. Some don't. A few come back missing parts and with haunted eyes. You wonder which version of him you'll see again. A part of you is still angry. Not at him, not even at your mother. Just at the fact that staying can feel like failure, even when you know it's not. The fire dies low. You tuck yourself tighter into the cloak. Tomorrow, you'll patch the roof. Check the sheep. Bring Mother more herbs. Maybe even ask Astrid to teach you a rune or two. Because someone has to stay. And you've decided, if you're going to stay, you'll make it count. The dead don't shout. That's the first thing you notice. The second thing is how loud the living can be in comparison. You stand near the funeral pyre, arms crossed, watching orange light flicker across the faces of everyone you've ever known. The air smells of pine pitch and damp wool. There's silence at first, respectful heavy, but you know it won't last. You didn't know him well. Jorund, middle-aged, barrel-shaped, famously afraid of boats, died peacefully, they say. Fell asleep under an apple tree and never woke up. The kind of death you almost envy. No raids, no sagas, just a man who made excellent pickles and told the same 3 jokes every Yule feast. But the fire still burns for him, the same as it would for a war hero. That's the quiet truth they don't tell you in the sagas. Most Vikings, they died like Jorund, not with a battle cry, but with a soft exhale and a loaf of bread half-baked. And yet, here you are, singing songs, pouring mead into the fire, watching the flames curl upward like questions no one wants to ask out loud. The feast that follows is boisterous because grief here is always wrapped in meat and ale. You sit with Finner, who is still sulking about the non-raid. He's poking a slice of smoked trout like it personally insulted him. You know, he says, if I die like that, just toss me in the pig bin. Noted, you reply, sipping broth. He grins. Promise you'll sing something wildly inaccurate about me? Something about slaying a dragon with a soup ladle? He claps your shoulder. Perfect. Across the fire, someone starts a tune. It's off-key but enthusiastic. A woman stands to dance, nearly topples into a barrel, and keeps dancing anyway. Laughter breaks out. Grief softens. You overhear snippets of conversation. Did you see the size of that leak? His beard caught fire once, remember? I swear that's the goat he owed me money for. Historians still argue whether Viking funeral feasts were solemn religious rites or wild community parties with a side of spirituality. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe it depends how much mead was left. You help your mother serve flatbread, your hands moving automatically. Her limp is gone, but she still leans on you when no one's looking. You don't mention it. Later, as the fire burns down and the stars blink into being, someone asks you the question, "So, when's your first raid?" It's Bjarka. Broad-shouldered, smells like sweat and ego. He's got a wild braid and one eye that never quite focuses on you. You shrug. "Not planning on it." He snorts. "What are you, scared?" You resist the urge to say "of you," and instead just smile. "I like my face," you say, "and I'd rather not lose chunks of it over a silver goblet I don't need." He grins, but it's the kind of grin that says he doesn't understand you and maybe never will. "Suit yourself," he says, turning to brag about the time he accidentally lit a monk's sandals on fire. You exhale and sip more broth. Warm, salty, familiar. Someone brings out a drum. A girl with ink-stained fingers begins to tap a slow rhythm. Others clap along, half-hearted at first, then louder. A chant forms, low, rhythmic, primal. The kind that reaches back into your ribs and rattles something old. You join in. Not loudly, just enough to feel the pulse of it. The ancient thrum of community, of people remembering they're not alone. That night, you walk home beneath a sky so clear it feels like glass. The stars seem unusually bright, like someone's polished them. You stop by the old standing stone and touch it. Cool, rough, silent. No hum, no answers. You whisper, "I'm still here." Back inside the longhouse, the fire's burned low. Your sister is asleep, curled around a pillow that used to be a folded tunic. Your father's snoring gently. Your mother sits near the hearth, staring at the embers like they're about to say something important. You sit beside her. "Did you know him well?" you ask. She nods. "He once gave me honey when I was sick, just left it on the step, never said anything." You smile. "Sounds like him." She pats your knee. "There's honor in that, you know." "In honey?" "In being kind, quietly, when no one's watching." You nod. She gets up, mutters something about the laundry, and disappears into the shadows. You stay there, watching the final glow fade. Tomorrow, the pyre will be ashes. Joran's name will echo for a few weeks, maybe months, then fade. But the honey, the quiet acts, the laughter over leaks, that lingers. You lie down on your straw mattress, tucking yourself in as the wind picks up outside. Your thoughts drift, not to raiding, not to battle, but to the quiet, resilient people around you. And you wonder, maybe this life, unremarkable, unmourned by sagas, is the one that actually lasts. The stranger arrives without warning, riding a shaggy pony and wearing a cloak stitched with colors you've never seen outside of dreams or hallucinations brought on by bad mushrooms. His beard is forked, his boots are polished, and there's a sparkle in his eye that says, "I've seen things you wouldn't believe." You see him first, mostly because he's arguing with your goat. You stop mid-step, squinting at the scene. The goat bleats with fury, likely territorial, and the man, rather than shooing it, begins negotiating. "I'll give you 2 dried figs," he says, "and you pretend I'm terrifying." The goat is unimpressed. So are you, but also curious. You approach cautiously. He turns, smiles broadly, and bows. "Traitor," he says, "from the east." You raise an eyebrow. "East of what?" he points vaguely. "All of it." Within hours, the village has gathered. The stranger, he calls himself Halim, is camped at the edge of the square, surrounded by rugs, trinkets, and boxes that clink in mysterious ways. He lays out wares with theatrical flair, fabrics smooth as river mist, coins with holes in them, dried orange peels which he insists are edible, and, most shocking of all, a small curved lens. You lean in. "What is that?" "Glass," he whispers. "From the south. It makes fire from sunlight." You scoff. "That's not possible." He nods gravely. "Most useful for lazy pyromaniacs." He lets you try it. You angle the glass toward a dry leaf. After a long, awkward silence and some squinting, smoke appears. You drop it with a yelp, and he chuckles like someone who's been burning things professionally for years. Astrid appears, eyes locked on the lens like it's a god's eye fallen from the sky. She asks to buy it. Halim strokes his beard and says, "Only if you give me something equally magical." She hands him a carved runestone. It hums faintly. Halim's smile fades for a moment. Just a flicker. He pockets it without a word. That night, you sit around the fire, passing around tiny sips of Halim's strange fermented drink. It tastes like spoiled apples wrapped in smoke, but people nod politely as if it's divine. He tells stories of markets that float on rivers, of cities where the walls sweat from heat, of kings who wear silk and eat birds smaller than your fist. The villagers hang on every word. Even the skeptics fall silent. Someone asks about raiders. He shrugs. You have axes. They have walls. It's an old dance. Then, quieter, he adds, most people out there don't think Vikings are real. Just stories. Boogeymen to scare rich children. You blink. That's almost offensive. But he's not done. They don't know about the sheep herders, the bread bakers, the mushroom gatherers who sing to themselves. They don't know about you. You shift uncomfortably. It's one thing to be ignored in your own village, another to be invisible to the world. After he sleeps, snoring gently beside his pony, people buzz with excitement. Some want to leave with him. Others want to trade more. A few believe he's a spirit in disguise, testing the village's virtue. Historians still argue whether these kinds of foreign traders were common in Norse settlements or rare enough to cause the stir you're witnessing now. Either way, he's the most interesting thing to happen since the salted herring fire of 3 winters ago. The next morning, he's gone. No farewell, no trace. Just a single coin left on a rock and a very smug-looking goat chewing on one of his rugs. You spend the day in a fog of speculation. Finner is convinced the man was a thief, or a spy, or possibly a wandering wizard. Your sister insists he smelled like crushed flowers. Your father, with his usual economy of speech, just says, odd fellow. You sneak a visit to Astrid. She's still staring through the glass lens, using it to inspect everything from embroidery stitches to ant legs. She lets you look again. Through it, the world bends, distorts, sharpens. It feels like seeing more. You hand it back. She says, if we had more of these, we could copy runes small enough to fit in a pebble. You grin. You going to write the world's tiniest saga? She doesn't laugh. Maybe. Or maybe I'll make one no one can read. Fair. That night, as you sit by the hearth, you can't help but wonder, why did he come? Why here? Maybe he was lost, or running. Or maybe, just maybe, he was looking for something this village still has. Stillness, curiosity, people who haven't traded wonder for noise. You think of the lens, of the runestone, of Astrid's quiet defiance. Not all magic comes with drums and lightning. Some arrives on shaggy ponies, sells you a pocket sunbeam, and leaves before the chickens wake. You are not built for winter. No one is, really. But you especially. Your boots leak, your bones creak, and your mood has been frozen somewhere between mildly grumpy and dangerously close to yelling at inanimate objects for 3 weeks now. The snow came early this year, thick, smug, and relentless. It blanketed the village in silence and ice and turned every task into an obstacle course. The paths are treacherous, the water barrels are frozen, and your goat has decided the only warm place in the longhouse is directly on top of your bed. You don't argue. The goat wins. The days blur, wake, shiver, eat something gray, stoke the fire, grunt a greeting, repeat. And somewhere in the middle of all that comes the mead. A cask of it, found behind the granary, half buried and forgotten since the last decent harvest. Someone opens it, someone else tastes it, and then everyone gets involved. You didn't expect the winter to become a mead-fueled saga of poor decisions and experimental sledding techniques, but here you are. Day 1. Someone pours a toast to warmth and wildness, and before long, the village square has turned into an impromptu festival. Bread is passed around, along with questionable cheese. Your cousin tries to kiss the healer, who threatens to diagnose him with chronic stupidity. Day 2. Someone finds old reindeer hides and builds a sled. Someone else straps it to a cow. You watch from a snowbank as they attempt a downhill charge and immediately crash into the midden pile. You clap. Respect must be paid. Day 3. A debate erupts over who can build the tallest snow god. Yours has horns made from beetroots and a face shaped like your brother's. He's not amused. You are. You wake on day 4 with a pounding head and the distinct memory of trying to teach the goat to dance. She was better at it than expected. At some point, you remember the chores still exist. The sheep still need checking. You wrap yourself in every layer you own and trek out through waist-high snow. The sheep stare at you like you've betrayed them. One has icicles on its ear. You break them off gently, whispering apologies like you're speaking to a scorned friend. Back at home, your sister is baking. Actual baking. You nearly weep at the smell of something not boiled beyond recognition. It's a flat, crunchy thing with honey and bits of dried fruit in it. She calls it sunbread. You eat 5. Later that evening, the wind picks up. It howls down the chimney like a wounded god. The fire pops and hisses, throwing shadows that dance across the walls. Someone suggests a story. Your father nods toward you. You haven't told one in a while. You blink. You mean out loud? He grunts. Better than arguing. So you do. You tell a ridiculous tale of a man who tried to warm his house with only the power of compliments and sheep farts. The children laugh until they hiccup. One of the elders cackles so hard he falls off the bench. Your mother smiles behind her mug. You catch your sister watching you with a strange expression, something between pride and surprise. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The world for now is quiet. The next morning, the roof caves in. Not entirely, just the corner over the food storage. You and Finner spend the day hauling soggy root vegetables out of the snowdrift and swearing with increasing creativity. You invent an entire new curse involving cabbage and the god Loki. He applauds. Historians still argue whether Viking longhouses were architectural marvels of passive heating design or glorified wooden caves with smoke holes. You now have opinions. That night, the fire burns low, and you sit with your back against the wall, listening to the wind outside and the slow, rhythmic breathing of your family. It hits you suddenly. You're happy, not in the grand, overwhelming, saga-worthy way, but in the small, persistent warmth that comes from survival, from laughter, from sunbread and mead, and knowing someone will always be nearby to help patch a roof or tease you when your goat steals your blanket. You close your eyes. Winter will be long, but you'll outlast it, because the secret isn't fighting it, it's dancing with it. Even if it's just you and a goat in the firelight, you wake to the sound of bells. Not church bells. Those belong to distant kingdoms and louder gods, but small ones, handmade, tied to goat collars and worn as status symbols by the particularly vain sheep. It's spring, not officially, not entirely. There's still frost clinging to the corners of the field, and your breath hangs in the air like a ghost that refuses to leave. But the sun rises earlier. The ice on the stream crackles thin. The birds are screaming again. That's how you know. The thaw has begun. You help your sister gather offerings for the spring rite. A handful of dried berries, the last of the honey, and a carved wooden horse that once belonged to a cousin who now insists he's too old for toys. You bury the offerings in the moss behind the standing stone, whispering a few practiced words. You don't know what they mean anymore, but you say them anyway. Back in the village, everything is wet. The kind of wet that sinks into your bones and makes even dry things feel damp. Roofs drip, boots squelch. Mold reasserts itself as the true ruler of all corners. Still, spirits lift. Spring is like that. It makes fools of everyone. Finner has shaved half his beard to welcome the season. He looks like a man mid-transformation into a walrus and refuses to acknowledge it. Your father tries his first step outside in weeks and is immediately yelled at by your mother for forgetting his cloak. He retreats, muttering about independence. The young ones begin to race sticks in the stream, pretending they're ships. They name them after real raiding vessels: Hammer of the Sea, Frost Wolf, Goat's Revenge. Yours wins a few rounds. You didn't even name it, it just drifted well. You spend the afternoon helping move the sheep to a fresh field. They are not grateful. One manages to climb a boulder and scream at the sky. You relate deeply. At the edge of the field, you find wild garlic poking through the loam, a hopeful sign. You gather a handful and gift it to Modir, who says nothing but immediately puts it in her stew. That's high praise. Later that week, the village hosts the first blot of the season, a celebration of fertility, new beginnings, and not having frozen to death. There's music. Sort of. A man with a harp-like instrument plays the same 4 notes while a girl sings a wordless tune that may or may not be an accidental spell. People dance anyway. You are paired with Sugni, the baker's niece. She's taller than you, has arms like boiled rope, and smiles like she's about to steal your goat. You try not to fall over. "Don't worry," she whispers. "I'm leading." You nod, because clearly she already is. She smells like bread and smoke and something faintly floral. You find yourself smiling in spite of your usual spring awkwardness. She asks if you've ever been to the coast. You say no. She says she has, once, and saw the sea foam dance like wolves. You tell her about the time you saw 2 sheep headbutt a wasp nest. It's not the same. She laughs anyway. Later, you sit by the fire, both of you red-faced from exertion and possibly the mead. She hands you a piece of sweet bread and nudges your elbow. Ever think of getting married? She asks, with the casual tone of someone inquiring about the weather. You choke slightly. She grins. I mean, not today, she says, but maybe someday, before we're both hunched over and yelling at chickens. You glance at her. Who says I'm not already yelling at chickens? Exactly, she says, taking a bite. Spring continues. You build a small fence around your garden, though calling it a garden is generous. It's a patch of dirt that hasn't frozen in a week. You plant onions and hope. You help Astrid carry water one day, and she tells you she's been experimenting with ink. Real ink, not just soot and spit. She's trying to copy runes onto linen. It smears easily. You suggest drying it over fire. She raises an eyebrow and mutters something about barbarian science. Mother teaches you how to mix a poultice for bruises. You test it on Finner after he slips on a thawing fish and refuses to admit it hurt. Your brother returns from the raid. Sort of. He limps into the village 3 days before the equinox with one ear slightly less ear-like and stories spilling out of him like soup from a cracked bowl. He smells like salt, smoke, and someone else's spices. He won't stop talking about the size of the gates in Rouen. He's clearly proud, also clearly exhausted. You sit beside him at the fire that night. He shows you a coin. It's silver, foreign, oddly light. He claims it was stolen from a monastery. Then he shrugs. Didn't feel as satisfying as I thought. You nod. He glances at your hands. You've got calluses. Sheep are demanding. He chuckles. They bite less. Most of them. He leans back, stares at the smoke curling toward the rafters. You missed nothing, he says quietly, but also everything. You understand, and you also know something he doesn't. Some things, like spring and the way she looked at you when you didn't fall over during the dance, don't come from across the sea. They grow quietly here. You're not entirely sure how it happens. One moment, you're eating a turnip and trying to remember if you fed the chickens. The next, you're being handed a carved stick, pushed into a circle of men with furrowed brows, and told, "Congratulations, you're now part of the thing." You blink. The thing? Yes. The thing. The local gathering of elders and free villagers. Part legal council, part gossip circle, part endurance contest to see who can shout the longest without needing to pee. And now, apparently, you're involved. Your job? Hold cloaks. And not just hold them, respectfully hold them, which means not dropping them in the mud, not letting chickens sit on them, and absolutely not wrapping yourself in them when it gets cold, no matter how tempting. You sit at the edge of the assembly, half listening as disputes are aired like laundry and grudges are measured in goat units. Two men argue for nearly an hour about whether one sheep was stolen or if it simply changed allegiances. No one wins, but everyone claps anyway. Someone proposes a new rule: no singing before sunrise. Someone else counters: no banning joy. A vote is held by stone toss. A raven steals one of the stones. The vote is voided. You nod sagely, as if this is all perfectly reasonable. Finner joins you at one point, sits cross-legged and whispers, "We're making history." Are we? Technically. It's the thing. You're not convinced, but you appreciate the optimism. Someone starts yelling about salt prices, again. This particular argument has been resurfacing every spring since the incident known only as the Great Fish Rot of 12 winters ago. You missed it, but the stories are vivid. One involved a barrel exploding. Another involves someone briefly going blind. Today's version focuses on fairness. Why should her family get 2 sacks of salt while mine gets 1.5? Because your son traded a goat for a wooden sword. It was enchanted. It was wet. Things escalate. You and Finner are told to escort the 2 loudest men away for a cooling down walk. You do this by gently pointing them toward the river and offering them small apples. They grumble, but accept the peace offering. Historians still argue whether the thing was a truly democratic institution or just a structured way for Norse people to yell with legitimacy. After today, you're leaning toward both. You return to your seat, only to find that someone's used your cloak pile as a nap nest for their baby. You let it happen. Babies get priority. As the sun shifts, the thing turns ceremonial. A new tree sapling is planted in the center of the field, a symbol of continuity, of rootedness. It's small, unimpressive, and will probably be eaten by a goat before midsummer. Still, you clap politely. The rest of the day is taken up with feasting. Dried fish, Turnips, honeyed barley cakes, mead that tastes vaguely of pine cones. The speeches drone on, some poetic, some painful. One man begins an epic poem about his ox. It lasts 16 verses. No one stops him. You glance around at the faces. Old, young, sunburnt, frostbitten, bored, rapt, distracted, delighted. It's all here. You realize something. No one here is impressive by saga standards. No great warriors, no ship captains, no rune carvers of divine insight. But every single person matters. The woman who weaves the fishing nets, the boy who learned to mimic bird calls so well he scared off a real hawk, the old man who talks to his turnips. All of them are stitched into the fabric of this place like stubborn thread. And now you are too. Later that night, you walk home, a little tipsy from pinecone mead, clutching a leftover cake and wondering what exactly your new role entails. Your mother laughs when you tell her. Thingmen, huh? You nod solemnly. Cloak holder first class. She pats your shoulder. We're all part of the thing, one way or another. Most of us just never get a stick to prove it. Your sister suggests sewing you a new tunic with Thingman stitched across the chest. You decline politely. That evening, as you tend the fire, Astrid stops by. I heard you joined the thing, she says, sipping from a steaming cup of something herbal. You shrug. Against my will, but with good posture. She smiles. Careful, they'll be asking your opinion on trade routes next. You pretend to faint. She pretends to revive you with a goat. You ask if she's written anything new. She nods. A love poem about salt. You blink. Romantic? Tragically. You think about the shouting match earlier. Somehow, this all makes sense. You fall asleep that night, wrapped in your honorary cloak, still slightly warm from baby and barn smoke, with the stick of office resting beside your bed like a weapon of extreme mediocrity. And before your eyes close, you whisper to no one in particular, I matter here. And for once, you believe it. It begins with salt. Again. This time, someone accuses someone else of hoarding it. Not officially, not with evidence, just a suspiciously loud whisper near the well that turns into a full-blown debate by midday. By sundown, the whole village has picked sides and someone has painted a crude symbol of disapproval on a storage shed. Your job, apparently, is to mediate, because you're part of the thing now. And with great cloak holding comes great responsibility. You meet with both parties in the square. They bring witnesses. You bring a stale biscuit and low expectations. The accused, an elderly man named Kettle, who once tried to milk a rooster, is outraged. I've been using the same salt pouch for 15 years, he bellows, rattling the very bones of his cart. His accuser, Svala, with eyebrows sharp enough to slice cheese, points dramatically at his pantry. Then why is it glowing? You investigate. The pantry does, in fact, glimmer faintly. But upon further inspection, it's just fish scales reflecting the afternoon sun, and perhaps a little mold. You sigh. A heated discussion follows, during which someone brings up a completely unrelated goat incident from 2 winters ago, and another demands reparations for a broken comb. It spirals. You're about to call it quits when Finner steps in and declares, "Let the gods decide." He throws a carved rune into the air. It lands in a puddle. Everyone stares at it. No one knows what it means, not even Finner. You, wisely, declare a tie. Both parties grumble, but the public loves a non-solution. You walk away to scattered applause, and someone shouts, "All hail the Salt Whisperer," which is going to follow you forever, unfortunately. Later, you sit by the river, tossing pebbles and trying to reclaim a fragment of your dignity. Astrid joins you with a jug of something herbal and strong-smelling. "Salt drama again?" she asks, sipping. You nod. "This time I was almost stabbed with a pickled radish." She laughs. "You must be very threatening." You watch the current for a while. "Do you ever wonder," you ask, "if this is all just noise?" She tilts her head. "The salt?" "No, everything. The goats, the gossip, the cloak holding, the feasts. It feels like a distraction sometimes from something we're missing." She considers this. Maybe, or maybe it is the thing. The noise is the point. You frown. That feels like something a person who's never stepped in goat droppings would say. "I stepped in some this morning. Still, wore the wrong boots." Fair enough. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out a folded scrap of linen, hands it to you. It's a stitched line of runes, small, delicate, impossibly precise. You squint. "What does it say?" She shrugs. "I forgot. It might be upside down." You grin. That evening, a chicken goes missing. The usual suspects are questioned. The accused include 1 fox, 2 children, and the wind. The chicken is eventually found inside a barrel of dried fish, utterly unrepentant and smelling like an old god's snack bag. You use it as an excuse to declare a new law. No more storing livestock in food containers. The crowd cheers. Someone throws you a piece of bread. Your mother watches it all with an amused smirk. "You've become very important," she says, slicing onions. You gesture with mock grandeur. "I am the keeper of village harmony, arbiter of chickens, champion of salt." She throws an onion slice at your head. Your father nods from the corner. "Could be worse. You could be raiding." You pause. It's true. News has come from the coast. A returning crew, what's left of it, tells of storms, betrayal, and a shipwreck on foreign shores. One of the survivors has a permanent twitch and refuses to eat anything but mushrooms. You think of your brother. He left again, weeks ago, this time for a longer voyage. Said he'd return rich or heroic or both. You hope he returns at all. That night, you dream of waves, not violent ones, just slow, rising water. You stand in a longboat that never moves, surrounded by fog, with no oars and no destination. The sea breathes beneath you like a sleeping beast. Somewhere, a bell rings. Not loudly, just enough to remind you that time is passing. You wake with a strange calm. Outside, the chickens are already squawking. The bread oven is warm. Your sister is humming something off-key. You stretch, breathe, and begin your rounds. Not because you're a hero, not because you're extraordinary, but because someone has to hold the center while the rest of the world spins. And maybe, just maybe, that's what power really is. This piece feels like a perfect emotional crest in your ongoing village cycle. It's warmer, more grounded, but still edged with the understated melancholy you've been threading through. Why it works so well? Immediate character re-entry. Your brother's arrival is messy, chaotic, and hilarious, which instantly makes him human rather than mythic. Comic specificity. Tried to seduce the storm into a rematch. Traded for a wheel of cheese. Candle that smells like sadness. These sharpen the humor without breaking the tone. Village as witness. The crowd's reaction, kids, elders, Finner, the blacksmith, turns his return into a community event and keeps the setting alive. Shift into quiet intimacy. The fire scene and the "more here" line land because they come after the noise and absurdity, letting the emotional weight breathe. Two-layer storytelling. Public tales are absurd and inflated. Private ones are stripped down and vulnerable. This contrast makes him feel real. Closing beat. "You're not jealous anymore" is a gentle but powerful arc completion for the narrator, especially tied to the "found it here" sentiment. If you keep going, I think this is the natural pivot point toward a late year or pre-winter reflection episode. Something slower, where both siblings are in the same space for the first time in a long while, working together on something unremarkable but meaningful, repairing a fence, smoking fish, planting late-season crops. That would let the arc settle before you launch into the next season's chaos. Do you want me to map how this could slot into your full year in the village sequence, so it reads like a single, long, seasonal narrative? That way the emotional beats stack neatly across all the episodes you've written. The child is burning up with fever. You're not sure whose it is at first. Someone's niece, someone's cousin, but that doesn't matter. Word spreads quickly. She won't wake up. She's shaking. Mother's tried everything. You arrive at the healer's hut to find the girl lying on furs, sweat glistening on her brow, breath shallow. Her mother sits beside her, eyes wild, muttering prayers that blur into sobs. The hut smells of pine, dried herbs, and desperation. You look to Mother. She shakes her head once. Too fast, too deep. The heat won't break. There's no drama in her voice, just years of watching people go. But something inside you stirs. Not fear, not panic, memory. Your grandmother. Years ago, whispering to you as she ground leaves between stones. This one's for fire in the blood. This one chases it out. If ever they forget, you remember. You kneel, gently move the girl's damp hair from her face. Her skin feels like hot stone. You rummage through Mother's shelves without asking. She doesn't stop you. You find willow bark, elderflower, and that strange moss your grandmother insisted only grows on stones that listen. You boil water. Mix carefully. Grind. Pour. Stir. Lift her head, you say. The mother does. You tip a spoon of bitter tea into her mouth. Most of it spills. You do it again and again. Then you wait. The village moves around you, but you barely notice. You stay by her side for hours. The fire dies low. Shadows grow long. You change her cloths. Hum an old song. one your grandmother sang while planting onions. And just before dawn, she stirs. A murmur, a flicker. Her hand curls slightly. She breathes deeper, cooler. The fever breaks. Her mother gasps, grabs your arm, sobs into your shoulder. You sit there, still holding the spoon, stunned. Mother enters, takes one look, and says, "Well, I'll be retiring soon." You manage a weak smile. Word gets out. Not immediately. Not loudly, but whispers thread their way through the thatched roofs and fire pits. She brought the girl back. She knew something Mother didn't. Must be her grandmother's blood. People begin to look at you differently. Not like a raider, or a thingman, or even a good shepherd. Something quieter, older. Astrid visits the next day. Brings you bread and a carved wooden charm shaped like a sprig of moss. "You made it through the night," she says. "Barely. You saved her." You stare into the fire. What if I hadn't remembered? But you did. You take the charm, hang it near your sleeping spot. Not for magic, just meaning. Later, a man visits you. Quiet, nervous, his son has nightmares, can't sleep, wakes screaming. You brew something with chamomile and mugwort, teach him how to sing the soft lullaby your mother used. The nightmares fade. A woman asks about a rash, a boy with a twisted ankle, a cough that won't leave. You're not a healer, but somehow you become one anyway. Not with titles, not with rituals, just with remembering. Historians still argue whether village healing in Norse times was dominated by appointed vulvas and herbalists, or if knowledge passed silently through family lines, woman to child, brother to sister, friend to friend. If you had to guess, it was both, and neither, and whatever worked in the moment. You begin to gather more herbs, learn which moss prefers shade, which bark scrapes best for teas. You make friends with the weird swamp that stinks but grows the flowers that lower fevers. You even talk to the standing stone sometimes. It says nothing, but it listens. And your hands, your quiet, awkward hands, become instruments of care. One evening, your brother finds you drying leaves over the fire. He raises an eyebrow. "Thought you were going to be a saga hero." You shrug. "I heal people now." He nods. "Very intimidating. What's next? Cuddling them into submission?" You toss a bundle of nettles at his face. He yelps. Later, he sits beside you, quieter. "She'd have been proud," he says. It takes you a second to realize he means your grandmother. You say nothing, because saying nothing is often more powerful than any chant or charm. One night, the girl, your girl now, the one you saved, brings you a drawing. It's rough, wobbly, but clearly you. Big head, tiny arms, giant spoon. "I made you magic," she says proudly. You pretend to gasp. "Have I been enchanted?" She nods solemnly. "Forever." You pin it to the wall with pride. That night, as you lie beside the hearth, the coals glowing like old memories, you feel a kind of weightless gratitude. Not the kind you shout about, just the kind you carry, like herbs in a pouch, or songs in the back of your throat. You close your eyes. You are not a warrior. You are not a wanderer. You are something they never write sagas about, but something essential, someone who stays and heals and remembers. It begins with thunder, not overhead, beneath you. A low, distant rumble that shakes the ground as if something massive is shifting beneath the village. The sheep bolt. Birds vanish. People pause mid-step listening. Then, the rain. It falls in sheets, hammering the rooftops, overflowing barrels, turning the dirt paths into fast-moving streams. Someone's thatch gives way. Someone else's outhouse floats briefly before crashing into the smithy wall. You sit under the eaves, cloak drawn tight, watching the world unravel into water. Mother mutters, "The gods are arguing again." Astrid stands beside her and says, "Good. Maybe they'll settle something for once." The storm doesn't pass. It swells. 3 days of downpour. Winds so strong they pull shingles loose and slap goats across the pasture. The river grows louder, angrier. It eats at its banks like a starving beast. By the fourth night, the sky cracks open like it's been split with an axe. And the lights come. They shimmer along the horizon. Green, blue, violet. The aurora dances like gods flicking silk scarves across the stars. Children cry, dogs bark. The elders don't speak. You lie on your back in the soaked grass, watching it swirl. It's beautiful and terrifying. You whisper, "What do you want?" The lights don't answer, but you feel something old move in your chest, a memory that doesn't belong to you. The next morning, half the village gathers at the standing stone. It hasn't fallen, hasn't moved, but the moss on it, usually dry brown, is glowing faintly. Someone swears it's a sign. Someone else swears they saw the gods walking between the trees last night. Finner insists he saw his future self, wearing a feathered cape and carrying a chicken scepter. You quietly take his meat away. Still, there's something off in the air, the kind of tension that comes before change. You hear people whispering. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe a new age is coming. Maybe the raiders brought something back with them. Maybe the gods are tired of being ignored. You watch, listen, and say nothing, because you feel it too, like a hum beneath your ribs, like the world holding its breath. Astrid comes to you that evening. Her face is pale, not with fear, with knowing. I had a dream, she says. You nod. Let me guess. Lights, water, maybe a bear that speaks Latin? She doesn't laugh. I saw the mountain fall, she whispers. I saw the valley flood. I saw this village underwater. You blink. She grips your wrist. We need to be ready. How? She shrugs. That's the problem with dreams. They don't come with instructions. You spend the next day walking the perimeter of the village, noting which homes are closest to the river. You check the animal pens, the food stores. You reinforce the root cellar door. You don't tell anyone why, but they start helping anyway. People feel it too, even if they pretend otherwise. That night the wind shifts. It comes from the east, low and cold. The clouds scatter, the stars return, and the lights vanish. Just gone, and still no one breathes easily. Your brother finds you sharpening sticks, pointless but comforting. He squats beside you. You think something's coming? I think something always is. He nods. But we're still here. You nod too, because it's true. Through storms and silence, raiders and rumors, chickens and salt wars, you've remained. And that has to mean something. You dream again. This time, you're standing in the middle of the square. Everyone's frozen, mid-step, mid-sentence, and overhead the sky parts, not violently, but gently. And from the light above you descend. But it's not quite you. It's a version of you that's older, wiser, eyes full of stars, hands glowing faintly with moss-green light. You speak to yourself. You say stay, then wake. No disasters come, no mountain falls, no flood sweeps the valley. But something has changed, not outside, inside. People speak softer, help faster, laugh a little easier. The silence after the storm isn't dread, it's reverence, for the ordinary, for the staying. Historians still argue whether the Norse believed in destiny as fixed fate or as a web of woven threads, tangled, unpredictable, constantly retied by the choices of mortals and gods alike. If they're right, you've tied your thread here, in this moment, in this place. You sit by the stone that didn't fall, place your hand on its side, and whisper, I stayed. Your hands are in the soil again, not because something's wrong, or because someone's sick, or because your goat has eaten something she definitely shouldn't have, though that did happen, again. No. Today, you're planting. Carrots, maybe, possibly parsnips. Honestly, you lost track 2 rows ago. The sun is warm on your neck. The breeze is lazy. And somewhere behind you, children are arguing over who can jump the farthest across a puddle. It's a good day. A small day. And that feels like enough. Astrid sits nearby, sketching in a book made of stitched-together bark. She's experimenting with pigment made from crushed berries and beetle shells. It smells terrible. She says it's worth it. Your brother is building a chicken pen. Again. He swears this one will be fox-proof, goat-proof, and brother-proof. You don't ask what that last one means. Mother naps under the shade of the smokehouse roof. The dog, Bark, lies at her feet, tail twitching in a dream. Everything is still. You think about that. How stillness used to feel like failure. You used to wake up with a pressure in your chest, the ache of unclaimed stories, the whisper of distant waves, the need to do something grand. Now you wake to the scent of bread and the creak of a roof beam and feel settled, not finished. Not trapped, rooted. You walk the edge of the village before dinner, past the stream, past the path where you once ran after a lost lamb, cursing under your breath. You see the new sapling planted during the thing, somehow not eaten by goats. It's grown 2 hands taller. A ribbon flutters from its branch, left by a child or a wish. You add one too. Just a string. No words. No need. At dinner, everyone eats outside. The sun won't set for hours. It's that time of year again when the sky forgets how to darken. The long light stretches shadows and laughter. Bread is passed, then pickled fish, then something called mystery stew, which you strongly suspect is turnip again. Your sister brings out the goat in a tiny hat. She claims it's for fashion. The goat claims nothing but wears it with smug pride. Your mother retells the story of the traitor with the fire lens. Your father adds exaggerated sound effects. Thinner pretends to be the lens, dramatically catching sunlight with his mouth. Someone nearly chokes laughing. Later, someone sings. Then two more people do. Then it becomes a contest. You win by not participating. You lie back in the grass, full and content, as the stars finally peek out one by one. The sky smells like earth and smoke in late spring, and you think you've lived a Viking life. Just not the kind the songs remember. Not a raider, not a king, but something sturdier. Someone who showed up, held the thread, chose love over glory, chose here over there, chose now over someday. You hear your name in the distance. It's a child holding a drawing. It's you again, this time with a crown made of flowers, holding a spoon in one hand and a sheep in the other. You laugh. Accept the art like a gift from a court painter. And you whisper to no one in particular, this was enough. The fire is just embers now, quiet, glowing faintly in the hush between stories and sleep. You lie on your back beneath a sky so vast and gentle, it feels like a blanket pulled up by ancient hands. The breeze brushes your face, soft as a memory. The village is still, the kind of stillness that isn't empty, but full, of days well lived, of chores done without complaint, of laughter echoing like distant drums through the trees. You hear it all, just faintly, the creak of wood, the shuffle of straw, the long, slow sigh of someone finally letting go. You remember the girl you helped, the songs you didn't sing, the stories you didn't chase, but became part of anyway. You remember goats and porridge and salt arguments and healing hands. And in this soft hour, you understand something deeper than words, that a life doesn't need to be loud to matter, that staying can be as brave as leaving, that peace isn't the absence of storm, it's the hearth you return to after it passes. You breathe slowly, in, out, like the tide, like the wind, like the stories that keep weaving even after the names are forgotten. Somewhere in the dark, a bell chimes, not loudly, just enough to remind you, you're still here. And that's enough. Good night, traveler of still paths. You were never forgotten. You were never small. You just stayed, and that made all the difference. End of script. Sweet dreams.